Welcome back to another episode of the Power of the Story podcast. I'm your host today, Phenom, and today we have with us a very special guest. He's a 24-year-old author from Atlanta, Georgia. He has a passion in entrepreneurship, finance, and investing, which led him to his book, his self-published book is that, Breaking the System, that he wrote while he was in college. So, Jordan, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule for being with us here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Phenom, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure and really excited to have this convo with you today.
I appreciate that. So, first of all, for any of our listeners that aren't listening, just give us a quick overview. Who is Jordan?
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Now I'm currently living in Brooklyn. Um, like you also described, I'm someone who's always had a passion for entrepreneurship and business since a young age. I would say that I'm definitely someone who grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad was always someone who was starting his own businesses and writing his own books, doing different community events. And I loved that when I was younger, he always took me to everything he was doing. He took me to his business meetings. He took me to conferences he was going to. He was business partners with my best friend's dad, my best friend, Brandon Iverson. Our dads would work together. They do a lot of initiatives together. And so Brandon and I were viewing all of this firsthand. And I think that entrepreneurial passion just rubbed off on us. And it motivated us to start trying our hand at entrepreneurship, whether it was selling our used toys and video games in elementary school out of our book bag, or, eventually we started selling our own books and CD tapes on financial topics for people our age and in simple terms they could understand. And then it became more serious endeavors like starting a clothing line called Young Moguls brand that we started in high school. And so we've always just had that DNA of wanting to build and wanting to work on things that we're really passionate about. And like you said, one of those things for me was writing. That was something, especially during college, that was very therapeutic for me. And during my junior year of college, I would spend a lot of time journaling on different topics related to career, related to spirituality, or just personal development. It all came together in the book that you mentioned called Breaking the System. And so I think all of those experiences kind of sum up what I would describe myself as being entrepreneurial and just being someone who likes to create projects and share ideas with other people.
I can feel you on that. I'm the same type of person. Like, if people ever ask, like, what is Phenom up to right now? I'm making a project. That's whatever floats my boat. I'm just, making some type of project. So with
Yeah.
everything that your dad took you to, all the different type of events, writing all the books, what stuck with you the most? I was just like, man, my dad's cool, but even more, I kind of want to be like him.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing that stuck out the most was one that I really loved, that I never really saw my dad report to a formal job, I guess you could say. Not that I didn't see my dad work. I saw my dad work harder than he probably would have if he had a job where he went into an office or, was doing a 9 to 5. And he did have those jobs mostly before, when I was super young or before I was born. But most of the time I remember being in the household with my dad, he was always working for himself and spending all of his time working on projects that he was really passionate about. And I know that's not normal. And that was something that really stuck out to me that I really respected, is that one, it gave him the opportunity to control his time. If it meant he wanted to come to my basketball game or, coach my basketball team, he was able to rearrange his schedule a little bit because he owned his time and he worked for himself. And that didn't mean that he worked less. It meant that he probably had to make sacrifices and at times work later in the day and get less sleep and travel more. But he was able to sort of rearrange his time for what his priorities really were, whether it was family. And it also meant that he was able to spend his time working on what he was really passionate about. And I think that's what I grew up seeing and admiring from my dad is that, um, sure, he might have made some sacrifices being able to make more money if he had gone into a different type of career, or it might have been easier going into a job where the career was just, you go from A to B, B to C, and it's just simple. But he chose a path where he was able to be a little bit more creative. He was able to do what truly made him happy. And I think he was able to be more successful because of that. And I think that really stuck with me as I get older. And, I have a job now, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a job and working hard. But I think it still inspires me to, one, work jobs that I'm truly passionate about and that speak to me and my soul, but also on the side to spend my time doing things that, spark love within me, things that really give me that feeling like my soul is awake, where I'm excited to wake up and do something that I feel like can provide value to other people. And that's something I got to credit from learning from him. And I think one other thing I will say is I just really admired how he was always learning, and still is. He still is always learning. But I remember whenever we would get in the car where we were driving to school or driving to church, wherever it was, he was always listening to some sort of educational tape or motivational tape. And when I was younger, it would always get on my nerves. I would be like, all right, Dad, let's listen to the radio. I want to hear some music. We would never really listen to the radio when we were younger. Whenever we get in the car, we were always listening to Jim Rohn or Les Brown or all these other speakers. And it was annoying at the time, but I see what he was doing now. He was literally he wasn't wasting any time. He was using all of that time to become better and to not only better himself, but to plant those seeds in my mind at a young age to help me become better as well. And I'm really thankful for that.
It's so funny that you say that because I do that. I'm going to say, if I'm being completely honest, 35 to 40% of the time when I'm in the car.
Yeah.
Not 100, but I do it more often than, the average person. And last year, my coworker and I had to make a trip, and it was an hour-long trip. And I put on a podcast as soon as we got in the car. She immediately put on her headphones and fell asleep. So I feel you on that. Being like, not everybody wants to sit here and listen to a podcast or motivational speaking or just any type of lesson whenever they're in the car. They want, music to go by. But that's really cool that he was able to subconsciously instill those positive message and those life lessons in you guys as you were growing up. So I can definitely tell that he is a large aspect of your life and who you are. Would you say that seeing him have that freedom really shaped how you continue to grow, as an entrepreneur, as author, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely think that's probably the biggest influence for me is, I think you use a good word, freedom. And as I think back, even now, that's a big thing for me is freedom is something that I value very much in every realm of my life, whether it be my career, whether it be, in my personal endeavors and just what I want to learn or how I want to express myself. I think freedom is a beautiful thing, and it's a powerful thing. And I think, seeing my dad when I was younger, just being able to have that freedom, I can tell freedom is really important to him, even just from his background as well. Just us as African Americans, him being an African American from South Carolina, knowing his story, but also my grandmother's story of not always having a lot of freedoms and being restricted in a lot of realms of what you can do or what people will let you do, or the boxes that they'll kind of put you in. And I think that really is a driver in why my dad values freedom so much. And as a result, why I value it so much is because a lot of the freedoms we have now, our ancestors haven't always had. So I try not to take that for granted, that we have a lot of opportunities to build for ourselves and take advantage of different opportunities and really do what we're passionate about, because I know a lot of my ancestors haven't had that opportunity. So that's definitely something that means a lot for me. but also I know it's something that means not just a lot to my dad, but also for my mother as well. It's something she instilled in me just as much. The thing I loved the most that they did was they never really inhibited me from chasing my passions when I was younger, whether it was, wanting to explore sports or starting all of these businesses with my friend Brandon at a young age. They never really told me, oh, okay, you're doing too much. Just focus on school, come back home and do your homework. They gave me, a little bit of a leash to start my own businesses, to play around with these different projects and push the boundaries. And I'm really grateful that they let me explore those passions for myself.
What businesses were you and Brandon doing?
Man, where do I start? I'll backtrack and tell the story. I know when I think we were about 10 years old, 11 years old, and our dads gave us both this book from Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you probably heard of it.
Have it.
Yeah, I'm sure you have it. It's obviously it's a staple. And I remember they gave us sort of like the kid version or the version that you give to your
Yeah.
kid. So we were reading that, learning just about investing, the importance of being an entrepreneur, building for the future. And I think that's when it really started to spark those ideas. And I remember Brandon and I both read that book at the same time. And then we came together after like, okay, what are we going to do about this? So what's the next step? And I remember at the time, all of our endeavors were just either focused on getting shoes or getting video games was really all we cared about. So, and mostly it was video games. So literally we would go always make the trip to GameStop and we were asking our parents for money to get a new game for Xbox or for a Game Boy, whatever it was. And eventually they got tired of us doing that and were saying,
It was
okay,
like $60.
yeah, they were expensive. So that was really what probably motivated them to give us the Rich Dad Poor Dad book and be like, if you want some more video games, it's time to start getting creative. And so Brandon and I started this endeavor. We called it Kids Toys Inc. was our company name. And we literally, I remember we went over to his house first. We were like, okay, what don't you want in this house? Video games, toys, and we got it, put it in the basket. We went to my house, did the same thing. And we were just going to sell this stuff to our friends. So we would literally, I remember we would take it to church. And after church, all of our friends would always hang outside the church building. And we literally had like these games we were trying to sell. And kids would buy them from us for like $5 or $10. And we would make a little money. And then we actually made a website. I remember I had this white MacBook.
At 10 years old?
We had, I don't remember what the platform was, but there was this platform on the MacBook that you could like build a website. And Brandon and I literally spent days like after school at each other's house putting together a website. And we had a website for Kids Toys Inc. So when we would go to church or we would go to school, parents would get tired of us just being out there selling video games. So we would just direct them to the website. And be like, okay, if you want to buy it, you can buy it on the website and we'll bring it so we know exactly what games to bring to you when we see you at church or at school.
Wow.
So that was how it started, like literally just, selling video games. I remember that was our first thing. And then fast forward a few years, we get to middle school. And like I said, Brandon and our dads would do a lot of seminars in the community about financial literacy, about investing. And I remember they would do one every Tuesday together, and they would actually pay us like $20 every Tuesday to come in and set up the room for them. So to like set up the chairs, clean up after. But they also had a book and the CD series that they would sell to attendees in the back of the room. And so we were in charge of, handling.
You can't say no to a kid selling CDs.
Exactly. It was genius, right? It was genius now that I was thinking about it. I see.
Yeah.
You can't turn down, kids trying to sell stuff in the back of the room. So we were sitting in those sessions, learning about a lot of these things. And we were also reading on our own. And a lot of the people coming to these seminars were parents. So we actually started to
Mm.
sort of take that information and make it really simple for, topics that people our age in middle school could understand, because we thought it was important information to understand, because we also noticed we weren't getting a lot of education like this in school. Obviously, we were learning about math, science, but we weren't learning about what investing was. We weren't learning about the stock market. But we could tell that was important because we saw all these adults trying to learn about it too. So obviously, it was important. So we would literally have a mic in our room. We would record little topics, burn them on the CDs, and take them to our dad's meetings. And we would start selling those in the back of the room as well.
Y'all had a Kids Bop version of financial service.
You hit it on the head. I cannot describe it in a better way. It was literally a kids bop version of investing. And so literally all of these parents would be saying, like, they all had kids and they would just think it was great that they could sit, buy the stuff our dads had, but also buy something for their kids to talk about the same topics. And the company was called Making Money for Teens. And we literally had this CD series on like investing topics we had learned and all of this stuff. And listening back to it is cringeworthy. Like, it's literally our voices super high pitched talking about investing in the stock market, but it was all good information, and the parents really enjoyed taking it to their kids. So that was step 2. And then step 3, we got to high school and we started Young Moguls brand when we were in high school, because all the stuff in Making Money for Teens was great. Brandon and I had a CD series. We had even published a book together called Who Needs an Allowance, and we were selling that in the back of the room. But we wanted to pit these themes in a way that was better targeted for our audience, high school students at the time. They didn't always want to read books, unfortunately, or they didn't always want to listen to CDs. And we knew that, clothing was one of the best ways to get our age group's attention, and also to share important messages to our age group, even in the shirt that you're wearing right now. It's a great way to show your personality, to show what you believe in and show what you stand for. Which is why I think the shirt you have on now is dope. And that's what we were thinking at the time is, okay, how can we share what we called the mogul mindset to our friends? We wanted them to start thinking like entrepreneurs. We wanted them to start thinking of starting businesses for themselves. And so we started a company called Young Moguls brand, and we would really just make this casual attire to empower our friends and give them these themes to think about. And it literally started with us just printing shirts, putting them in our book bag and selling them in class when our teachers weren't looking. And, at the time, Brandon and I started going to different high schools. So it got popular at my high school. Then it got popular at Brandon's high school. And then it started popping up at different high schools.
How did y'all go to different high schools if you had class during the day?
Literally. So up until high school, Brandon and I went to the same school. And then I kept going to that school. And then Brandon went to a school called Buford High School in Georgia. So Brandon was now at a different school, which kind of sucked, but it was great because that was a new school that we could, branch off into now.
Right,
so
new market.
He was doing his thing at that school, and just all of a sudden we had ambassadors pop up at different schools because we started using social media and we're doing giveaways and that type of thing. And then it started popping up in different states, and it just kept growing from there. And it was just a cool business that we were able to take with us throughout college as well, and just learned a ton from, and we're able to build a pretty cool community from. So Brandon and I have had a lot of cool experiences just growing with each other, learning lessons, having successes, having failures. But he's been a great partner for me to really just challenge myself with and build with.
I love that. So did you go to college because you wanted to actually get an education, or were you going to college to sell to the students and staff there? Like, you have a large market there. You said, I already taken over high school. Let me go ahead and take over the college market. So what's up with college?
Man, that's funny you say that. And honestly, it's probably a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Me and Brandon, No, I ended up going to Philadelphia. I went to UPenn and Philly, and Brandon went to DC at Georgetown. So we thought with DC and with Philadelphia, we got two huge markets to explore. Um,
Hilarious.
but on a serious note, for both of us, I think it was wanting to go where we knew we could explore our passion, which was business, and not just business, but also having a holistic education and being in an environment where we felt like we could meet a lot of other talented minds. And that's really how I felt going to Penn and going to Wharton. Was I knew that it was, a great school for people who want to be in entrepreneurship, who care about finance. It's a place where they go to challenge themselves and learn. And I can honestly say, looking back on my college experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It pushed me academically, but I also just felt like it was a great area for me to also learn just as much outside of the classroom with, Young Moguls brand and starting other entrepreneurial projects, working on the book while I was there. It literally just felt like I had a lot of resources as a student to be encouraged as an entrepreneur and complement what I was learning inside the classroom with trial and error outside the classroom as well. So I loved it.
Mm. So I almost forgot about the book. I don't know how, because we've been talking about CDs and T-shirts. So were you in college almost like, hey, I've already mastered CDs. Let me go ahead and take it to the next step. They had the visual version of it. So let me go ahead and give them an actual visual version. So how did you figure out you wanted to write a book about all this?
Yeah, I think one, it started off really, initially it wasn't going to be a book per se. Initially it was just, in all honesty, junior year, I was going through a really hard year at school, just kind of felt out of the groove, felt like I didn't really know my identity on campus, was kind of struggling to find what I wanted to do in the future, what I wanted to do career-wise, or just what I was genuinely interested in myself, not just what everybody said I should be interested in. And so how I went about that process, and I think how I usually go about even that same process now when I'm feeling kind of lost or clouded, is I start to write. It's sort of just a therapeutic way for me to clear my head as someone who's an overthinker and get it all out of here and get it on paper. And so I started just kind of journaling after class and in the computer lab, and would just go there for quiet, would write about these different topics. And at the same time, just had a lot of different conversations with my peers on campus and started to realize they were feeling a lot of the same things. And in a lot of ways, we were all going through the same process together as young adults, trying to find our way and what our future was. And so that was sort of when I started to realize, okay, this could be a book. This could be a resource, not just to help myself through this process, but maybe, these things I'm writing about can be something to encourage other people as they go throughout their own process. And I think that's when it started to become an actual project. And even when it became a project, I think it was still something that was really therapeutic for me. It was something at the end of the school day after a long day of class. It was what I looked forward to, going to that computer lab in my dorm building and just having that quiet time to write and let all those feelings out, and to really feel like I was learning myself and talking myself through a lot of these things I was going through. And so looking back, that was really a big turning point for me in my college experience, because it just helped me get a lot more clarity, but it also helped me really lean into, it was a project that helped me individually, but also something that brought me together with other people too, because it was something they could kind of use to unite our experience together and be a resource for other people as well. So that's something that even now I really look back on as a special experience. And it's taught me how important writing is for me, even in my everyday life now, even if it's not something, commercial.
You said that you would write because it was like therapeutic, when you were overthinking, you would write. It just helped you understand yourself and just like release whatever,
Yeah.
built up emotion, whatever tension that you had going on throughout the day. As you were writing the book, did you ever actually like overthink the writing within the book, or was it all just like a flow?
That's a good question. I've never really thought about that. And I will say, I think writing is something I've noticed that helps me overthink a little bit less. I think throughout the day, I usually overthink um, when stuff is just in my mind. It sort of circles my head, um, and it sort of just continues the cycle. I think something that's good with writing for me is once I feel like I've written it down or typed it out, it sort of stays there instead of circling around my mind anymore. I'm not sure why, but I feel like it's one of the ways for me to release it in a way. And sometimes for me, it can also be talking it out with, with a friend or someone else, with parents, whoever it may be. But I feel like um, just having my thoughts and writing them out almost feels like a big sigh of relief sometimes. And I even find that after writing, sometimes it'll even feel like I've done a workout sometimes. Like it's exhausting, but it's like that good exhausting after like you've had a nice jog, where it feels like, wow, that needed to come out and I'm glad it did. And now after this come out on paper and I can see it, now my thoughts related to this topic are a lot more organized. And when I want to talk about it, I'm a lot more organized in how I talk about it. So I think writing has become a good mode for me because it just helps me, not maybe not clear out the thoughts, but at least organize them in a more sustainable way, which is always helpful.
I can definitely relate to you on that one. I ran cross country in college, so I was accustomed to running, let's just say 4 to 9 miles for fun. Like
Wow.
on a given day, I would just like go out and run, especially in times where I was like, I had a lot to think about. I would go out on those 4 to 9 mile runs, and it would essentially be my form of writing where I can think about any and everything I need to do, and I will have plenty of time to like just like almost like organize the thoughts, and figure out what need to be done or where I want to go from there. So I can definitely understand you on that one. That sometimes it's just you really need something to let out everything that's in your mind, or just like organize it in some type of way. What advice would you give to somebody that is looking to maybe get into writing to be able to help their thought process, or just organize any type of overthinking, anything that they have going on in their mind?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think my advice would just be to experiment a little bit to find which sort of exercises and activities work well for you. I think, I can share what works well for me, but the honest truth of it is that what works well for me in my format might not be a good format for someone else. The way I write might make someone else feel more stressed out, or might um, be not really conducive to someone else's character traits. But I would say the thing that's fun for me is just trying out the different formats. So a lot of it, how I initially started was writing physically in a journal, like on pen and paper. And sometimes I would try coming with specific topics and putting on my agenda and saying, okay, today I literally just want to write about um, maybe a current event that's been on my mind in the news. And I just want to write out my thoughts and just put pen to paper and just see what comes out. Or sometimes maybe I'll come and try today, instead of just free flowing and seeing what comes out, I want to write a set organized agenda, and I'll write all the topics and sort of outline it and try it that way. And so from me experimenting different ways, I think I started to figure out what mode of writing works best for me. So now I know that for me, usually I like writing on a laptop and typing, because I feel like my mind sometimes goes a little faster than my hand can with the pen, and it bothers me sometimes when I can't get all my thoughts out. Um, with pen and paper, or I feel like I forgot what I was going to say. So I found that typing is good for me. When I'm journaling personally, I like to sort of just come with a clean slate. I don't really want to plan it out. I don't put any time constraints. I just, find a quiet place, put on some relaxing background noise, and just I like to see what comes out naturally. And it kind of shows me what subconsciously may be on my mind. And when I'm writing more, for a specific task or for a purpose, whether it be for work or for a book, I really enjoy outlining. I love having an organized flow to my thoughts and, struggling with the format a little bit, but being able to organize it in a flow that's a clear, flow of thought and makes sense. And then I can look back and just sort of be satisfied at how it all came together. So I think, my advice would be just to experiment with all these different formats, but also just to write consistently. And
Mm.
everything you write doesn't have to be a perfect thought piece. Sometimes it can be ugly. Sometimes it won't be cohesive. But I think just the practice of consistently writing and just coming to that place and having that discipline to, put your thoughts down, I think that's the most important thing than anything is just building that habit. And once that habit is there, the efficiency, the flow, all of that starts to come if you come disciplined with the habit.
I love that you said, it can be ugly, just still get it on paper.
Yeah,
Because I have a mentor, she says, perfect is better. No, done is better than perfect because perfect never gets done.
yeah,
And I definitely feel you on that because sometimes people will want to have these perfect thoughts, have this perfect piece written, but they never start actually putting pen to paper or fingers to keys because they want that, but in reality, chances are that's not going to happen. But so Jordan, I want to know, you've had this wild journey that from just selling ever since you were 10 years old up until, you've written your book in college. Everything has seemed so clear because of the inspiration and, how your father's had a big part of your journey. Have you had any challenges that have really shaped you to who you are now?
yeah. That's a great question. Thinking back, I think back to those years at college. I think were sort of the time where I really felt like I was becoming an individual, where I really felt like I was, maturing as a man. Because I think that was one of the experiences where I just felt like I was kind of thrown in the ocean and just had to sort of learn to swim in a way. And I think that was kind of done purposefully. Like you said, I initially was thinking of going to school close by home just because I'm someone who's very close to my family. Like you can probably tell from a lot of these stories of, growing up and being close to my parents, being close to my sister and whatnot. I really value family. And I sort of knew that going to college, I thought it might be hard to get out of my comfort zone, but I thought it would be a really good challenge for me to just grow as an individual, which is part of the reason why I decided to go to Philadelphia. Initially, I didn't really have any family, didn't really have much family up north. I knew nobody in Philadelphia. I think I knew one person or two people at Penn before I got there. And I kind of was looking forward to that challenge. And when I got there, a lot of times uh, the things that came with that challenge was feeling pretty isolated. Feeling away from everything that was comfortable to me and what I knew well, and feeling isolated in an environment where I didn't really feel well equipped all the time for the challenge ahead of me. Academics was really hard. I felt like I was struggling. Sometimes was second guessing whether I made the right choice because academically I was kind of falling behind and struggling and didn't really know who to go to because I hadn't really formed that community yet on campus to sort of talk through these sort of things or deal with these sort of things. Um, and that's, I think those are the type of the time period where writing became so important to me, and just sort of that mindfulness, and just realizing how much of a benefit it was for me and my mental health to write about those things and get clear with them first, own those challenges, and then it sort of empowered me more to be brave to talk about them with other people. And I started to see that, that's when I sort of embraced vulnerability, and that's really what allowed me to connect with more people on campus. And ironically, that's when I started to get even more relationships and spark new friendships and really start to feel comfortable and at home in the place that had felt so isolated and at times depressing before. And so looking back, I think, those type of experiences are one that really shaped me even now, as I kind of feel like I'm branching out again. I was living in Atlanta the past two years and wanted to branch out and explore New York with all of its challenges and sort of, feel like I could grow up again in a new way on my own and mature in a new way. So I think all of those challenges are really shaping me right now, even as I'm going through it. But a lot of these practices that I've learned from the book or from the process of making the book, or even just what I've learned growing up, I think they help me to go at these challenges with healthy mechanisms to make sure that I'm growing and being mindful throughout all of them.
With that entire experience, especially throughout your college experience, when it really started to shape who you are now, that led you to writing the book as well, what would you say was the number one thing that you learned that somebody can take with them today and apply it to themselves?
I think the number one thing I've learned was that vulnerability is really a powerful thing. And I think I learned a lot of lessons during the process of writing the book and, diving into some of the topics of the book. But I think the thing I learned the most was just leaning into that vulnerability. For me, so much when I was younger, it was all about, making things look easy or acting like you have it all together, getting through your challenges and then talking about them when you're on the other side, but not necessarily talking about them when you're in the middle of it. And I think the thing that was powerful to me is I just realized how powerful vulnerability is for yourself, but also for the people around you, and how much it really is such an important factor in unifying you with the people around you. I think people think that, you attract more people to you when you look like you have it all together and when everything is completely successful. That's probably true to a certain extent, but I think we underestimate how much people relate to people who they see deal with stuff that's just like them and aren't afraid to show it and own it. Because the reality is everybody goes through stuff. Everybody has challenges. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
has it all together. And we're all trying to make it seem like, we've got it all together perfectly. But I think the people that we really resonate with are the ones who are just fearless enough to say, look, this is bothering me. I'm struggling with this. I still need help with this. I'm still pushing forward, but I'm still human. And that's part of the beauty in all of this process, is that we're all human. We all have our own flaws and we all have the things that we're dealing with. But I think I just really learned how strong vulnerability actually is, ironically. And we think we might be weak when we admit that we're vulnerable, when we admit that we're human. But that's really when we're at our strongest. That's really when we are opening ourselves to be connected more to the people around us, to a higher power spiritually, when we admit that we can't do it all by ourselves. We need other people. We need other support. I think that's a really strong thing to do.
I had nothing else to say. That's a mic drop right there. I have no other questions. I don't want to have another question. Jordan, I want to say thank you so much for, hopping on here today with me and all the audience. But before we head out, how can they find you? How can they connect with you? Drop us your book title one more time. How can somebody support you, man?
I appreciate you, and honestly, thank you for this platform. I know we talked about it earlier, but I think it's amazing what you're doing with this platform to highlight authors. So thank you for giving me this platform to talk about it. Once again, my book is called Breaking the System. It's a resource to help people unlock their limitless potential. And if that sounds interesting to any of the people listening, I appreciate you guys supporting the project. You can visit my website, jordanwill.com, jordanwill.com. And I appreciate all the support from you guys. And I really appreciate you, Phenom, for your support as well.
Thank you so much. Well, you guys, it's been another episode of the Power of the Story podcast. Again, I'm your host, Phenom, today, and we will catch you guys on the very next episode.